What's going on, team? Array here from the Caveman Bets YouTube channel, bringing you our first episode for our brand new series we'll be doing, which will be focusing on every UFC event coming up this year. So we're going to kick this one off with UFC Vegas 50 or Fight Night 203, I think it is, if you want to be a dick about it. But basically, every week we're going to be going through the upcoming fights, going to break down how we're looking at the fights, what side we're looking at, and we're going to pick a side out of it. We are looking into later on doing more of a betting perspective as well, but this one's simply just going to be picking the winner for each fight. So guys, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring that notification bell so you know exactly when we're going to be going live. Right, let's jump straight into this one, and our first fight is to Fon and Chuqui versus Azamat Mazakanov. Now we've got Chuqui with a 6-1 record, 2-1 in the UFC, 6 feet tall with a 77-inch reach, and Mazakanov, a 10-0 record, a UFC debutant, 5'10", 71-inch reach. So a big reach advantage for Chuqui and a bit of a height advantage there as well. So these are, however, two smaller size fighters, and they both should be durable here. So the fight's going to be mostly contested on the feet, although if it does get down to the mat, Mazakanov does have an advantage. Now, I worry slightly about Mazakanov's gas tank, mostly because we haven't really seen him go deep before, though I do see Mazakanov potentially having a better career. I think Chuqui will be the best fighter that he's faced so far, and he's going to be throwing higher volume. Mazakanov really hasn't been seen to be throwing that great a volume. So if this fight does go the distance, Chuqui is going to look like the better fighter. I'm going to lean to Chuqui here. I just can't see Mazakanov getting the best out of this. If he does get Chuqui out, it's likely to be early. But Chuqui will be throwing volume, and he should be able to get this fight in the later rounds, whether it be by a TKO or a decision. Now, our next fight, we have Guido Connetti versus Chris Moutinho. Connetti coming in with an 8-6 record, 2-5 in the UFC. 5'6" tall with a 68-inch reach, going up against Moutinho, who has a 9-5 record, 0-1 in the UFC. 5'7" and a 70-inch reach, so a little bit taller, bit more length to him. And we all know him from that beating he took, of course, up against, what was it there, Sugar Sean O'Malley. So Moutinho, one hell of a chin on him from that beating that he took. Connetti does have some power, but he's 42 years old, and he's got gas tank issues. This may be a spot where we actually want to see what Moutinho really has in his arsenal, because we didn't get to see a lot in that first fight. Now, if we do see Moutinho come out, he does push a really good pace, and this could be a spot where he can just run down Connetti, who has a habit of backing up into the cage and letting himself get clobbered. It's going to be a tough fight to call, and not really for a good reason. Both these fighters are pretty low level. I am going to go with Moutinho here, simply because I just think he's got a few more ways to win. Connetti's likely first round or bust, while Moutinho has the cardio advantage and a chance to get a late TKO when Connetti gasses. Our next fight up is Cody Brundage versus Adultery. Now, Cody Brundage is coming in with a 6-2 record, but 0-1 in the UFC. 6 foot tall with a 72-inch reach. Lungiambula, an 11-3 record, a 2-2 in the UFC, 5'8", so coming in a wee bit shorter, but a 76-inch reach, so has got a bit more length there. Now, Brundage is a high-level wrestler who people are down on a bit because he was controlled by a top-level prospect in Nick Maximov in his debut. Dolce's coming down in weight class, and although his cardio looked okay against Barriou, his power looked to be affected coming down. Now, this one's going to come down to the takedowns. If Brundage can get Dolce down, he'll likely grind on him, wet blanket his way to a win. However, if Dolce stuffs the takedowns, then he'll likely expend Brundage's energy and get him out of there. Now, I'm going to lean with Brundage here for him to get the takedowns. I think he's a higher level prospect, and I just think he's got a little bit more want to be able to get this win here and get Dolce down. Our next fight up is a Damon Jackson versus Kamuela Kirk. Now, Damon Jackson, a 19-4-1 record, 2-1 in the UFC, 5'11" with a 73-inch reach, up against Kamuela Kirk, who has an 11-4 record, 1-0 in the UFC, 5'10" and a 75-inch reach. So we've got another tough fight to pick. They really just don't get any easier. We've got a chinny Damon Jackson, who's a submission specialist, versus a touted prospect in Kamuela Kirk. We really haven't seen the best of Kirk yet from his one fight in the UFC, even though that was a win. I think Kirk's going to have a big advantage in the stand-up here, and his defensive wrestling should be good enough to avoid the sub-attempts of Jackson. I am going to go with Kirk to get the win here, and what will probably be an awkward fight that's going to have us wishing the main card and the cracking fights on the main card will get here soon. We'll keep on rolling with Trevin Jones up against Jarvid Basharat. Now, Trevin Jones has a 13-7 record, 1-1 in the UFC, won no contest as well. Jarvid Basharat, 11-0, but will be making his UFC debut. 5'9" and a 69-inch reach. Trevin Jones, 5'7", a wee bit shorter, 70-inch reach, a little bit longer. Now, another fight that is going to be a cracker to watch. I'm really looking forward to this one. Maybe one of the most fights I'm looking forward to on this entire card. Trevin Jones was a highly touted prospect who fell in his last fight to a UFC debutant. However, if you throw that fight out, there's still a lot to love about Jones here. Basharat looks to be the goods, with a grappling-heavy approach, good fight IQ, and a strong stand-up game. Now, I believe Basharat will go on to do great things in the UFC, but I'm going to take Jones here. A lot of people forget Jones had about 3 fights fall out in the lead up to his last fight and had to keep himself in fight shape for almost a month and go through a bunch of weight cuts. So Jones will be looking to bounce back strongly here. Now, I think if Jones had managed to get the best of Barriou in that last fight, we'd be looking at Trevin Jones as a massive, massive favourite in this spot, and to be honest, he likely wouldn't be given a UFC debutant like Jarvid Basharat. So I think Trevin Jones, we're getting a huge number, and he is well worth it here. Next up is Matt Semelsberger versus AJ Fletcher. Semelsberger, a 9-3 record, 3-1 in the UFC, 6'1" with a 75-inch reach. Fletcher, 9-0, making his UFC debut, 5'10" and a 67-inch reach, so a massive 8-inch reach advantage going towards Matt Semelsberger. Now, Semelsberger does sound like the talk of the town right now, with his 15-second KO in his last fight. But really, when you dig into the fighters he's been going up against, he is a bit of a can crusher. Fletcher doesn't look like a can, he actually looks like a very strong fighter, but he will be making his debut. There will likely be some octagon jitters in there. Both guys have got incredible power, but Fletcher does have a grappling advantage. If this goes to the ground, Fletcher is the much better wrestler, and he has decent IQ from the limited film that I've been able to see on him. With all that being said, it would take one punch from Semi for this fight to be all over, and I am going to lean with Semelsberger here to get the job done. That reach advantage and the power that Semi has is just a bit much for me. Moving on, we have Alex Pereira versus Bruno Silva, which will be opening the main card, I believe. We have Pereira, that is 22 and... Pereira 4-1, 1-0 in the UFC. 6'4" with an 80-inch reach. This guy is massive. Bruno Silva, 22 and 6, 3-0 in the UFC, 6 foot and a 74-inch reach. So 4 inches of height and 6 inches of reach going the way of Pereira here. Now, you may have heard of that name before. Pereira is the guy that KO'd Adesanya, and what a KO that was. In fact, he's beaten him by decision as well. Both of these guys are KO artists, and someone is likely going to be unconscious at the end of this one. I have the potential of Pereira higher than Silva, and I have him doing it in brutal fashion. Pereira is a massive human being, and this fight is just right for his warehouse as they try to push him up into the rankings quickly so they can showcase a Pereira versus Adesanya matchup. Now, Bruno Silva, if he grapples, he can take an advantage through the grappling. He hasn't been a high-level grappler in the past. I believe he does have a BJJ black belt, but he just hasn't used it. Pereira has been working on his defensive wrestling, and he will need to do that and keep the fight standing if Silva does come out with a grappling heavy approach, but I still like Pereira to get the job done here. Next up is Drew Dober up against Terrence McKinney. Now, Drew Dober, 23 and 11 record, 9 and 6 in the UFC, 5'8", 70-inch reach. McKinney, a 12 and 3 record, and I believe he is 2 and 0 in the UFC, 5'10" and a 74-inch reach. So a bit of height and a bit of length going in favour of McKinney there. Now, the hype train for McKinney is real, and the quick finishing potential is unreal. McKinney is taking this fight on short notice a couple of weeks after his last fight, which is generally something I'm not a fan of. Dober has a hell of a chin and a strong gas tank on him. Dober, I believe, has the chin to withstand the big shots from McKinney, but it's the grappling where McKinney will have the decided advantage. The way I see this going is McKinney is live in round 1 only, and most likely by sub. If this fight gets out of the first round, I think Dober can KO McKinney, and I'm going to take the Dober side here, as a few defended takedowns in this first round will have McKinney in a really tough spot. Getting that second weight cut in a matter of weeks is going to be very tough for him. Just look what happened to Trevin Jones, a guy who's on this card in the undercard there. He had to do a few weight cuts in a row before he got his fight, and he got absolutely taken out. And I can see the same thing happening to McKinney here. You put them on a full camp together, and McKinney would be a rightful favourite, I would think. But just under the circumstances, you look at the fights recently that have been booked on short notice. Dan Hooker versus Makhachev. You've got Bobby Green versus Makhachev. There was another one, was there a couple of weeks ago. Basically, everything that's coming down to a guy taking a fight on short notice. I think apart from Chris Curtis last year, managed to get 2 out really quickly. It just hasn't been working out once they've fought a week or two before that. So our next fight up, we are going to have Khalil Rountree and Roberson. Now, Rountree at 9-5, 5-4 in the UFC, 6'1" with a 74-inch reach. Roberson 9-4, 4-4 in the UFC, 6'1" and a 74-inch reach. So we've got a fight that has one fighter in Rountree with one path to victory against Roberson, who has multiple ways to win. Rountree is a heavy-handed, one-dimensional fighter whose likely path to victory is by KO. Rountree usually starts slow, which gets him behind from the jump. Roberson is going to be moving up in weight class here, which should suit his all-round game. Roberson will be the busier fighter with a big grappling advantage. Roberson's 4 lost fights have all come by submission, and Rountree is not going to be initiating any grappling here. Rountree, I don't even know if he knows what a takedown is. I just think Roberson's going to be... He's got so many more chances to win this fight. Honestly, I think he could get him down. He could sub him. He could choke him out. He's got the potential in his hands to knock out Rountree. And if this goes to decision, Roberson is going to be the much busier fighter, especially after that first round. I would say Rountree's got the potential to take a round, and let's hope he doesn't go for one of those big chopping leg kicks like he did against Bukakis, which, oh my god, that was really nasty to watch. But Roberson, I think he's a slight favourite here, and rightfully so. I'll be on Roberson here. Alex Caseries versus Siddique Youssef. So we have Caseries with a 19-12 record, 14-10 in the UFC. He is 5'10" with a 73.5-inch reach. Siddique Youssef with an 11-2 record, a 4-1 in the UFC. 5'9" with a 71-inch reach. So a wee bit of length advantage here to Caseries. Now Caseries is on a 5-fight win streak, but none of those wins have come up against really tough competition. Apart from, you could say, the Choi victory in the last fight, but let's be honest here, Choi was well and truly winning that fight. He just gave up a bad position, and Caseries managed to get the choke in. If that fight had been extended, or if it had been KO in round 1, which it looked like it was about to be, Choi was easily going to be winning that fight. One of the big things we can take from that Caseries versus Choi fight was the counter strikes. Caseries kept going for the kicks, which allowed himself to be countered by Choi, and those counter punches hurt. Now, Choi obviously does not have the power that Siddique Youssef has, and if Youssef can counter-strike the same way that Choi was doing, this is going to be a short night for Caseries. We have Youssef as a high-level power that will rock Caseries with the counter-strikes. Youssef's defensive wrestling should be adequate enough to keep this as a striking match. I know it's not a lock, but I will be on the Youssef side here to bounce back against a lower tier of competition than what he has been fighting. I believe it was Arnold Allen in his last fight, who is a very good fighter in his own right. I just think there's a big gap between these guys. Youssef's a guy that should be pushing for a top of the division and potentially even a title fight at some point. Caseries has probably peaked for now. Moving on to the co-main event, we have Marlon Moraes going up against Yadong Song, or Song Yadong, whichever way you are inclined there. Marlon Moraes coming in with a 23-9-1 record, 5-5 in the UFC, 5'6" with a 66.5-inch reach. Song an 18-5-1 record, 7-1 in the UFC, 5'8" and a 67-inch reach. Now, whenever Moraes tries to take on a fighter that's going to push a pace on him, he gets knocked out. Now, Moraes has half a lung and about 3 minutes of cardio in the gas tank, and he's going to struggle to catch Song early. Song looks better and better every time he fights. He has a hell of a chin on him. He could probably take Moraes' best shots to the chin and keep walking forward. Song is going to get this done. Like, he's most likely going to knock Moraes out. Moraes is going to come out swinging because that's his only path to victory. The only way Moraes is going to be able to get the win here is if he can really push that pace and rock Song early. I just don't see it happening. I think Song's too fast, too high of a fighter IQ to be able to be rocked by Moraes. Moraes is going to gas. Song's going to use some of that big power that he has. He's going to put him down, and this one's going to be all she wrote. And Moraes might be the end of his career. Maybe one more fight up against a fighter trying to break into the rankings, but I don't think Moraes has got much career left in the UFC now, while Song, he's going to be pushing for a ranked opponent quite highly up the rankings over his next few fights. Moving on to the main event, Magamet Ankalaev versus Thiago Santos. Ankalaev coming in with a 16-1 record, 7-1 in the UFC, 6'3" with a 75-inch reach. Santos a 22-9, 14-7 in the UFC, 6'2" and a 76-inch reach. And really, this one doesn't take much of a breakdown. It's Magamet Ankalaev, and it's Ankalaev very comfortably here. There's very few fighters in the light heavyweight division right now who are going to be able to put up any type of resistance against Ankalaev. The only way I see Ankalaev losing this is to a high-level jiu-jitsu fighter or someone with incredible power that can knock Ankalaev out with one punch. Santos just isn't that fighter anymore. Santos is a shell of his former self. Two big knee replacements that won't allow him to keep up with Ankalaev. Ankalaev just takes this fight everywhere in dominant fashion and sends Santos to the brink of his career. Maybe this is Santos' last fight. Maybe he gets one more after this, but I do think it's time for him to fade off into the distance. Alright guys, thank you for listening to our brand new UFC podcast. Like I say, I'm going to be bringing one of these out every week, breaking down every UFC card for the rest of the year. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you know exactly when the videos are going to be dropping. We are looking into potentially doing some more betting focused videos as well, to try and see where the value is and what the best bets for each fight will be. I'm not sure if we'll get one done for this week, but we are looking into that for the future. So guys, make sure to leave some comments as well here. Let me know what you think. Did you like the video? Do you like the graphics? It's all a work in progress at the moment. Do you want to challenge me on something? What do you like? Do you have these fights going another way? This is the undercard especially a wee bit iffy. There is definitely some pick and choose spots, but absolutely guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you back next week. Cheers.